That's not it. Here it is.
I like laughter.
Troup and Smooch in the Dawgs Show.
Hit the wrong button.
Another new episode is coming up tonight.
Yes, it is.
You're listening to the one and only Dawgs Show. Your hosts, Troup, Brenson, and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dawgs Show with Troup and Smooch. And Smooch, a few years ago, it was, especially in baseball, man, people were so crazy about walk-up music. You got to pick your walk-up song, and it just sets a whole vibe for your at-bat and gets the crowd excited. I think we have the best walk-up music, the best intro music in the game.
Without doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah, ours is, it's first of all, it's indicative of our character and personality rather than something you searched royalty-free music for and found, I like that, it's kind of catchy. Or some people just pay a faceless musician they don't know that can throw a few samples together and then they go with one. But no, ours is tailor-made, in-house everything, nothing farmed out, and that's the reason it works so well. It is organic. It is a part of us, Troup. If you like us, you love our theme music.
Farm to table.
Farm to table.
I love it. Thanks, folks, for tuning in, and we're having such a good time as we slowly creep towards the regular season. We're the Georgia Bulldogs. We're the Georgia Bulldogs are primed and prepped to have another spectacular season. Off season is going very well. We got SEC Media Days to talk about right now, and some clips to discuss as well. I will say, folks, we do thank you so much for all the patronage we've had from you over the past couple of years. I will say, even though you can find us on any platform to listen to the podcast, if you'll please tune in to YouTube and check that out as well. A lot of work goes into YouTube, and there's so much more to see on our YouTube page because you got visuals, and Smooch does a lot of work with that, and just sensational. And that's taking off right now.
It really is. It's quickly catching all our other mediums, which we never foresaw. We learned so much by trial and error. And YouTube was at the bottom of our priority list when we started this. We're like, let's get an audio pod out. Let's get it on Apple, Spotify, and those guys. And then we started messing around with like a Twitter or X a little bit, just kind of creating a footprint, if you will. But man, when the YouTube took off, it's going great. We are having 5 times the viewership. Let's put it this way: we are adding about 10% to our follower list with every episode, and those are great analytics from everything I check. We're adding every single week to our listenership, and that one is growing faster than all of the other ones. The other ones grow very slow and steady, and YouTube's getting hard to keep up with. It was hard for me to keep up with the comments this week. We say we respond to every comment, so I had to take an hour or two and just respond to people this week. We appreciate it.
That's where I go first now. When I want to listen to the playback of the pod, I go to YouTube, pull it up, and, I manage a bar as well, so I'll put it on at the bar, and we'll watch it all. And people are like, oh, you got a podcast? I'm like, are you kidding me? You don't know about the Dawgs Show? Where have you been?
Not? They live in Georgia. How could they not know?
Smooch is very humble when he talks about our beginnings and what our I guess our plans for and goals for as a Dawgs Show. We want to be the best. We want to be elite, and we've been eating off the floor. And the Dawgs Show, as to quote Kirby Smart, with the Dawgs Show, we want to be the best possible product for you dog fans. And that's where we set our standards. Yeah. And you can hear some standards this week. And it's good to hear Kirby Smart talk at Media Days, SEC Media Days. And he now, and maybe even before, but with the GOAT, Saban retiring, Kirby Smart is that preeminent voice not just in the SEC, but SEC is also obviously the preeminent conference in college football. But Kirby's voice has the most impact, and we got to hear him talk this week.
Yeah, it's kind of like they always say that the president of the United States is the leader of the free world. Well, the top coach in the SEC is the leader of college football, and Kirby has proven even through the last few years he is the top coach in the SEC, which makes him the preeminent coach in all of college football.
This is the good old days. Don't let it pass you by, and you look back and say, "Oh man, I knew it was fun, but I wish we could get back to those days," because you are not guaranteed anything. We keep telling our other fan bases for other schools, you're not guaranteed anything. Your school may feel like a brand right now.
Right.
Nothing's guaranteed. We've seen it happen. We know history. History tells us what happens in the future.
Yeah.
And we know. So Georgia is very fortunate to have Kirby Smart and the drive and the expertise that he has and he demands from his staff, from everybody around him, as well as his team and his players. We're really fortunate to have that. And the Dawgs Show, we're not missing that. We're enjoying every step of the way, every benchmark.
Stop and smell the roses, buddy, every single time.
It is. So that's why I always say it's great to be a Georgia Bulldog, because it is always great to be a Georgia Bulldog. But these are the good old days, folks.
Yeah.
Smell the roses right now and enjoy it, because there's nobody doing it like Georgia. Doesn't mean Georgia's going to win every year, every national championship, but you're going to have a product that you're proud of, and they're going to give you. Kirby Smart puts this team in the position to be a champion every year, because that's what he does. That's what he's driven. He's driven that way and built that way, and we love it.
I was thinking about while you were talking, so we started pre-production. We start pre-production we take about 2 days off after one show comes out, and then we jump right back into on the next. And so when I jumped into the Kirby's address at Media Days, I went through, and I love everything he says, because it's so, when he says stuff like humility is only 1 week away or one game away or whatever it is he says. And I go through, and Troup, this, you saw my materials. I got done with everything. I had 23 clips pulled from Kirby.
Yeah, I saw that.
From Kirby's speech. I'm like, I can't use all these. But that's what it's like. That's what it's like. Everything he says as a Georgia fan, you're just like, oh, wow, there it is. And we clipped that one, clipped that one. So this will not be an all Kirby podcast, but we did get some good stuff.
No, we will preface this show before we get going with the Kirby portion of the podcast. We're going to talk about Media Days, of course, which includes Kirby Smart as well as his speakers from the team. Carson Beck and Malachi Starks, Mikell Williams. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we've said this before, but what do we think Georgia's potential for their offense this year? And we are so excited. We're going to talk about that, and then talk about the defense just a bit and how we expect that to change from game 1 to game 4. And game 4, Alabama lined up for game 4. How we expect that personnel to change. Mm-hmm. And last couple of segments, one about some recruits that we've seen that are gearing up for their high school seasons, and some have committed to Georgia, some have not. All of them are potentially Georgia Bulldogs, so we're going to talk about those guys. And then, as well, it's been a big week. It's been a big week with college football 2025 coming out. For some of those folks who pre-ordered it and got the deluxe edition and got a 3-day head start on the rest of us. Smooch is waiting for us to get finished with his pod so he can start playing tonight.
I'm thinking about it right now. Yeah.
But the delusion rests squarely with those Colorado Buffalo fans.
Oh, my God.
I don't even think they're Colorado Buffalo fans, Smooch. I think they're Coach Prime fans.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to talk about a little bit what's going on with that, and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, and how what we think of our thoughts. But
yeah, did Deion wake a monster in Colorado, or did Deion create a monster in Colorado? I can't figure out which one it is. I think he created it. I have never heard a word from a Colorado fan until Prime rolled into town.
I don't anticipate most of those fans are Colorado fans for long, but Colorado has their fan base. They're just not the vocal people we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, it's been legal there for a while. They're pretty quiet and laid back.
It is laid back. Chill. So let's kick this off, as this has been a fun week. As if you want to hear your favorite teams and some of those players talk and be questioned, and some of the other rivals as well, because we pay attention to all of it. Mm-hmm. But SEC Media Days this week, And Kirby Smart, who is, let me just quote this, what I wrote down earlier, Smooch, the most decorated active coach in the SEC, the most influential voice in the SEC, probably in the nation in terms of college football, and also running a program that sets the standard for success. And success is defined in lots of different ways. And the last way, of course, is the ultimate way is winning on the field. But Kirby Smart, all those things, Kirby Smart, and we got some good stuff to talk about that he said this week.
Absolutely. Kirby defines success in a way that winning is a symptom of it. That's kind of how he sets up everything. So that's the reason, and you'll hear this, all this stuff of, remember last year we heard Nick Saban revenge tour. He's upset about this. Nick Saban said, that's not how I coach. Kirby's getting the same questions this year. You got really done wrong by not being in the college playoff. You lost the SEC championship.
Even
by 3
Sankey
points.
said that. Sankey.
Yeah, I've got that right here, actually. Sankey said Georgia was one of the best 4 teams in the nation and didn't get in the playoff. But you don't see us, meaning the SEC, you don't see us jumping up and down and complaining and hanging national championship banners. I love this man. This is leadership. Yes.
Yeah, it's like Greg Sankey. He's the commissioner of the SEC. Is that what you call him? Is it president, commissioner? I don't know. He's the lead voice right now in terms of.
He's the commissioner. Yeah.
He's the commissioner. So, and Kirby Smart said it. We're going to play a clip that, because everybody wants to have a narrative, and the media especially wants to say, okay, well, what's driving you this year, and why are you going to do this but differently than the last year? And is it because you didn't get in the top 4? You didn't win an SEC championship, or you didn't win a national championship? And Kirby Smart had some comments on what he feels about those questions.
Yeah. So every year, right? So Kirby comes up with a saying, right? Like, do you remember what last year's was?
Better never rest.
Better never rest. That was it. And we played a soundbite on that several times. I could find it if you gave me a half hour. It's on this board somewhere. But anyway, here is Kirby this year with this year's, what do you call it? Mantra, slogan?
Mantra. Let's go mantra.
All right, here we go.
And one of the first things we studied was the belief of assume nothing. And I think that's so important in football. Because when you assume something, or you assume you know someone, or you assume that you know somebody's name that you're in the room with, you can take things for granted. It's just like starting over from a previous year. Assume nothing. Assume nothing. Start from ground zero.
Start from ground zero. He was finishing up with start from ground zero. This season is not dictated on what happened last season, either good or bad.
Right.
The past is the past. And we talk to Alabama fans all the time because they are quick to reference their trophy case. And they're confused when we say our last 2 national championships don't mean we're going to win one this year. We got to start from ground zero. And they're like, well, that stumps them, because they would never.
So true.
Never take that standpoint.
No.
Never.
It's always a history lesson.
It's a history lesson. And we're okay with that at this point, because we know the history is the best part of where the Alabama program is heading. And Kirby Smart, to his credit, understands that you're not guaranteed that because of your past success. You can't assume that since you won last year. You can't assume since you recruited in the top 3 last year, or that you were in this position last year. Georgia was 3 points away from heading to another Final Four and potentially another national championship. You don't assume that. And he was a meeting with Phil Knight, Nike. So that's the whole part of this we didn't play, but that was from Nike, Phil Knight, and kind of the things that kind of motivates them, or some part of their mantra, assume nothing.
Yes, make no assumptions. And that's the reason Nike has had such a wide appeal worldwide, is because, you hire, everybody thinks of Nike, they think of Michael Jordan, right? You hire a basketball player. They're not assuming in that all of their customers are basketball players. In fact, the people that bought the most expensive Jordans I've ever seen, none of them were athletes. They were guys that really like the shoes. And so that's how they built their business. They started from zero with everything, assuming nothing. And I think that with a football team, when you're talking about teamwork, when you're talking about starting every year from zero, that is so important because young guys full of testosterone and muscled up, if they beat somebody in the dirt last year, they're thinking about it this year. And it's about Kirby changing that mindset to a hungry mindset that has been erased, started over, and pointed in the right direction.
Yes. And when you're as successful as the Georgia program is, that's 3 straight undefeated regular seasons, complacency is always something that you strive to, you fight against that complacency because you haven't earned it yet. Last year doesn't earn anything for you this season. Football will have to happen and you have to take care of things. And the preparation part of it is the biggest part we have learned. I've become more and more aware is that Georgia prepares better than their rivals. They compare much better, a much more intense atmosphere than their rivals do. Yeah. And so assuming nothing to me almost feels just like eat off the floor.
That's so
you got to start from ground zero. That's where I love it. It puts everybody on an equal playing field and say, hey, it's also a recruiting pitch, Smooch, because you got these people negatively recruiting against Georgia saying you're not going to play there. Or if you play there, you might play in your last year or so. You're going to sit the bench behind all these players. Yeah. And Kirby's saying, don't assume that because I started a true freshman 2 years ago and won a national championship in the defensive secondary. Yeah. KJ Bolden is going to play a lot this year, if not start. If you're good enough, don't assume that somebody else is going to beat you out. If you're that kind of player, that's the kind of player Georgia recruits. So that's a recruiting pitch, not just for the players that are getting ready for summer practice and for fall practice. I love it. It's simple and it hits home. So Kirby Smart, give him credit once again. He has nailed it in terms of, we'll see where it takes Georgia. And it's not always about some kind of intrinsic motivation that you are not intrinsic. Intrinsic motivation is great. It's not something that has to be created from somebody else, is what I want to say. But you did say something else. I don't know if we have a clip. We can talk about it. If not, where somebody asked him about this year compared to his failures last year, if that was going to be kind of a motivation. I don't know if you have that.
Yeah, I got it right here.
We don't have a chip on our shoulder in terms of people trying to use that as motivation. I've never used a failure from the previous year as motivation, and I've never used the success of a previous year as motivation. We won't do that this year. That's not who we are. We want to recreate ourselves to say in the best light we can. And this team has been fun to coach. I tell people all the time, we had 15 really tough spring practices, and that includes the spring game.
Listen to this.
I probably would only trade one of those in and say, could I do it over?
And if you don't know Kirby Smart, folks, that's not him. He is very, very hard on himself and his team. And he will tell you really quick, I'm not happy where we are right now. We got a long way to go. He will say that a lot. We have a long way to go. And just to hear him say that, and it's not putting a positive spin. You're hearing what Kirby Smart thinks.
Right. He's not a rah-rah guy. He's not trying to motivate through positive reinforcement.
For the media.
No, absolutely not. He could care less what they think. What for Kirby to say that we had 14 out of 15 or 13 out of 4, whatever it was, great practices. I've never heard that. I remember when Missouri 2 years ago, when Missouri really gave Georgia a huge scare, Kirby talking about going in that week, they did not have good practices. He was very honest about it. And I think that to hear this with this group, he keeps saying that, Troup. He's referencing freshmen that could be starting. He talks about KJ Bolden, like you mentioned earlier, as someone that came in and it has been at all the practices and has really been showing. And you can see this is, from this whole media days thing, I think this is the most proud at this point that Kirby's ever been of his team. He's enjoying this team more at this stage of the season than any team I've seen so far.
It does seem so. And the thing about it is this is the post-Saban era. And what does that mean? I don't think Kirby changes the things that he does, but it's a post-Saban era. So Kirby Smart's voice carries even more influence at these type atmospheres and situations. So I like to hear him talk about because he does. He's thought about it, and they work through it, and they go through all these different trainings and seminars to try to figure out how to motivate college athletes and get the best out of people.
Yeah.
And he really invests. That's one thing that I'm most proud about what he's learned in his tenure with Georgia, and even more so than when he was at Alabama, because he didn't have to do those same things as a coordinator.
Right.
But at Georgia, he invests so much in people in terms of finding out their whys and why they want to be where they. Did you have something where he was talking even about learning what their names were? I don't know if we talked about that in the pre-show.
No, that's one of the ones I sent to you. It's not in our clip. But he talks about they do this exercise where every player gets up and gives his full name, his first, middle names, or names, and then his last name, and he explains why that is, where that came from, how he was named that, whether it was a relative or what the family history is behind that name. And he talks about how that is one of the best exercises for getting to know someone, for learning about them. And then he goes on to say, and when you're going into war on a football field with someone, when you know their why, when you know where they came from, why their parents named them what they did, the burden they carry on their shoulder, whether it's a mom, dad, sister, brothers, whatever it is, when you know all of that, you're willing to sacrifice, go that extra mile, play that extra down, whatever it is for your brother. And that's the reason for that exercise. He's a huge believer in it. He gave it his strongest endorsement. Yeah.
Love it. And it really hits home, and he does a great job with that. And I use it in my everyday life. I talk to people sometimes about the why. And when you learn somebody's why, it kind of grounds them, and it makes them think sometimes, what is your why are you doing this? Why? What is your why? Why? Especially if it's a big endeavor, why are you doing this? And if they can understand what their whys are, then it centers things where you know how to attack those things. And if you're talking about your teammates, and you connect them in a certain way where it is about sacrifice. Yeah. Because if you have a team of players who aren't willing to sacrifice, because they're out for their own, well-being and their own statistics a lot of times, or in terms of that's a lot of players are like that throughout college football. It's because the culture is not the same. Georgia has shown you, Kirby Smart has shown you that he wants these players to know their whys and to understand more about each other, because you're more willing to sacrifice and to do your part. It doesn't matter, because the ultimate team goal is success. Yes. And your success comes from your teammates, your brother's success. That's good. And understanding all these different parts of it is important. And I've even taken away from that as well, and understanding everything we do now. We say, okay, what is the why behind this? Great stuff, and it makes you understand better. So I appreciate that, Kirby Smart. So he's got a few players as well that had to speak. He had Mikell Williams and Malachi Starks, as well as Carson Beck. Let's start from the back end, is what I had it listed, and go with a Mikell Williams quote. He's a Georgia defensive lineman. Obviously going to play a lot on the edge this year, and we expect the havoc that he's going to create to be sensational. So that's Mikell got to say.
So this is the freak. A couple of things. The fact that he's at media days should horrify the rest of college football, because that means not only is he an athletic freak, he's a team leader. Kirby in his speech talked about that. Kirby said his ability, which is number one pick in the draft level, is dwarfed by his leadership. That is a terrifying notion. Anyway, Mikell has asked a question that is a trap. Now think about how many players you would hear answer this question different. The question is, what is your goal? What is your statistical goal for this upcoming season? Now think about what 90% of players in college football would answer, and then listen to Mikell's answer.
Kennedy Wright with CBS 42. What is one personal goal that you have coming up this season, and what is the game plan to kind of attain that?
One personal goal I have this year is to win a lot of games, and the game plan behind it is to go in week in and week out and do the things necessary to win.
That's
Pretty
it.
simple.
Think of what you would hear. You would hear, 10 plus sacks.
11 sacks, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. 10 plus sacks. A receiver, they're going to talk about receptions or touchdowns. But no, it's very simple. Kirby only brings in guys that want to Kirby, and it's about winning. And that's his goal. That's a huge bonus for a coach, especially when you're talking about a kid that has as much talent as you could possibly hope for.
Yeah, Mikell Williams, we are excited about him. And anything else that we had on him, or we'll move on to Malachi?
Let's go on to Malachi. I've got more. We can
Malachi Starks, we know he is another third-year player, right, Smooch?
Yeah.
And we have enjoyed Malachi Starks from the very get-go. We love interacting with. We even have I think his mom is actually a talk show follower.
Yeah, is it Tisha or Tisha? I can't. Yeah. We interact with her all the time. Yeah, she's a cool lady.
Yep. So
you have done a heck of a job, ma'am. Just want to say.
He has. It doesn't happen by accident, does it?
No, it doesn't.
So Malachi, again, one of the dog leaders, and on that defensive secondary, which had a lot of turnover. So they're depending on him to be a leader, as well as what he does on the field in terms of just football. That leadership is very important. We're going to hear him talk right here too.
Yeah, when we watched that Oregon game, we didn't. You don't know who's starting. So when we watched that Oregon game, you remember it was Malachi and Mikell that started that Oregon game a couple of years ago. They both walked out on the field with the starters, and we were baffled. Malachi has that ridiculous interception, and you wonder, how does a freshman come in and jump all these 4 and 5 stars and end up where he is? When you hear him talk, you start to understand why. Malachi was asked a question about his coach. This was his answer.
What's it like working with the coach on a daily basis? What do you see that the public might not see?
He's intense. He's very intense, but he means well. He's very competitive. He's just a guy who wants to go out there and win and wants to bring the best out of you. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to come to Georgia, just to be around a guy like that.
I love that. Chose to come to Georgia knowing he was going to get just pushed as far as he could possibly be pushed. Not for NIL, not for a fun time, not for a really great townhouse in Southern California, but to be pushed.
What I like is he said that he's intense, but he means well.
He means well.
Which means that he will hurt your feelings, okay?
That's right.
But the underlying, I guess, comment I've heard about this is that pay attention to the message and not the tone. The tone will hurt your feelings, but the message always is to make you better.
Oh my gosh. I wish I could. I don't know if it was Players Lounge or who I was listening to, but they were talking about being on the field, and Kirby's got the megaphone down by his side, and he's yelling at someone that's like 60 yards away that's not doing something. And then he turns to talk to the offensive lineman standing right next to him. He picks up the megaphone and yells into it right next to him.
Yikes.
Yeah, but he's intense, and there's not a single player that you'll ever say Kirby really hurt me. You don't ever hear that. You don't ever hear, and there's no one that asks more of his players than he does.
He does. But those are the type of players that gravitate towards him, the ones who want to be their absolute best, and
that's exactly it.
That's not always easy to get to. You got to work hard to get some of these players, even the best players.
Mm-hmm.
You got to break them down a little bit and challenge them, and that hurts. That's a painful process a lot of times, and that's okay because he got your best interest, and it's winning, but it's also development and investment in these young guys. That kind of gets you where you want to go. Anything else on Malachi?
No. I was just going to say the one Malachi was asked. We don't need to play this clip for time, but Malachi was asked about a player on the entire team that could come out of nowhere this year and surprise. And without hesitation, he named Dylan Bell. And
yes.
I thought that was significant because that's been the guy we've been behind all offseason as, you watch the NFL right now and you think Deebo Samuel, that type of player, the Dawgs have one. And when Malachi, the best athlete in the secondary on the Georgia team right now, when Malachi starts talking about someone impressing, that's time to pay attention.
He's not naming a fellow defensive player.
No.
We know how these players gravitate towards their position groups.
Right.
No, he's talking about somebody he has to defend and go against on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And so, pay attention to that comment. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, that's
right.
Worthy of some attention.
All right. Our last player who was the other one of the captains to show up for this is, of course, Carson Beck, the number one quarterback in college football this year. And that's by all kind of standards we could talk about to no end.
Everywhere but Colorado, he's the number one quarterback.
Everywhere but those, fanatics in Colorado. But
yeah,
Carson Beck, definitely lots of questions this week and had some things to talk about in terms of his development.
Yeah, so Carson's asked time and time again, like, are you going to be the guy? He says yes, and gives a Carson Beck answer. One of those really boring Peyton Manning-esque type of answers. But the best one I thought was the most heartfelt was he was asked about what his goal was, what his objective was, what he was going to improve on the most this year. And this is a great answer. And listen to the tone of his voice compared to interviews you heard last year. This is a confident man that has not just embraced, he has taken this team. Here you go.
What was your biggest goal for the offseason?
Biggest goal? I think for me, stepping into more of a leadership role is really my biggest goal and biggest area of improvement. I think last year I really leaned on Cedric, our center, because he had that leadership role. You know, he had accumulated and built that continuity with the teammates. You know, he gained that trust. He had that respect from everyone to where he could have that, you know, kind of vocal say. And me, I was the new guy on the block. You know, I was the new quarterback. I wanted to build that respect and trust as well. So, you know, going through it and having a year under my belt, now I think that I've been able to earn that from my teammates, and I can step into more of a vocal role.
So good. You know, before relational capital is what he's talking about. You know, to be a leader, that means you have to be able, remember N'Kobe Dean in the national championship game against Alabama, you have to be able to look at one of your brothers and chew them out to motivate them to be in the right place. And they may sack Bryce Young on the very next play. You don't know. But it's about building that relational capital. And that's what Carson's talking about there, that, you know, this is his team now. You know, it was SVP's team on offense last year, and he rightfully, great leaders know where to lead. They also know where to follow, and great leaders seem to fall right into their place when it's time. And now it's time for Carson to climb up that rock, just like Simba and the Lion King at the very end. It's his time.
So good. You nailed it, man. That was good. It's also you can't skip steps. We say this over and over.
Tennessee, pay attention to what he's about to say. Go ahead.
You don't skip steps.
You hear that?
Carson Beck didn't step into a situation and think he was going to do it all on his own, or be the guy, or pronounce to everybody that he was a Heisman Trophy. Give me the Heisman Trophy last year. He was not that guy.
Right.
He was fine. He knew he needed it. He needed to have that leadership. With we talked about it before last season, that Cedric Van Pran was going to be that bridge that he needed.
Yeah.
And now that he's been through that, and he's built that relation capital, and as well as his experience and just the learning curve that he needed. He's not skipping steps. The Georgia team doesn't skip steps. No. And Carson Beck is primed and ready for this point in his career and this point in his life. And that segues perfect, unless you got something else to talk about.
No, you segue away, brother.
It's perfect to talk about where Carson Beck is and his realization that what was last year is different than this year. And Kirby Smart letting you guys know that assume nothing, you start from ground zero, is beautiful. But Carson Beck is at the point in his career, because he's moved on to the NFL next year. He's ready, just like we saw with Stetson Bennett a couple years ago in his second year, to take complete command of this offense, where he doesn't need Cedric Van Pran. He's going to be the leader who helps his offensive line get where they need to be, to get his wide receivers where they need to be, to check into the right play, to change the play if necessary, with protections. He is at that point, and with the talent that he has, the arm talent, to move the chains, to provide explosive plays. Carson Beck, I think, this is my take, and my take is that Carson Beck is setting up for a season that could be an all-time Georgia offense. That's loading right now, and that's what I feel. And that's not something that I am wishing into existence. It's just looking at the way this thing has progressed, and the way it's not just with Georgia, other teams too. A player like Carson Beck in his second year with an offense and a team like Georgia has. He's about to take a gigantic step. When he had a great year last year, but a gigantic step in terms of this offense. Maybe the best offense. Listen, maybe the best Georgia offense of all time in this program history coming in 2024.
Yeah, somebody asked me, how do you lose Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey and get better? And my answer was, you're about to see. They're about to show you. Listen, name another elite team, and there may be one. I don't know everything, despite what it appears, but name another elite team that is returning their starting quarterback, their head coach, and their offensive coordinator.
Bam! Right there. Say it again. It's
name another elite team returning their quarterback, their head coach, and their offensive coordinator.
And if you do, they're a top 3 team.
If you do, they're a top 3 team, and it's hard to find the way successful teams lose coaches. Kirby has kept this team together, and the coaches they've added are massive additions. But you think about Stetson from year 1 as a starter to year 2. We love Stetson. If there's a Mount Rushmore, Stetson has to be on it. But we're talking about Carson Beck. We're talking about someone that looks like they were cut from the mold of what a quarterback should look like. And now you see the maturity, you see the arm strength, the arm talent, the mastery of the playbook, and you see receivers and running backs and tight ends everywhere. Oh, and by the way, maybe the best offensive line in the history of the Georgia Bulldogs. That usually, now, doesn't mean definitely, but if you're going to bet this is going to be a great offense, and you are not being unrealistic to think it's an all-time great offense.
Yes. And you mentioned, before I get there, you're going to show this graphic right now of Mount Rushmore. Yeah, Dawgs Show did have a Mount Rushmore graphic, and Bennett's definitely on it.
He is on it. Yeah. You know, I'm actually you ruined a gift I'm about to send you. Actually, I'm getting that framed. I'm going to take the 4th of July part out of it. It's just going to be our album cover.
It is. It's an album cover.
We're not really at a University of Georgia Mount Rushmore in that picture. It's all done through the magic of computers.
Yes, it is. But if you're worried, and we're all going to miss Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey and Rosemary Jack Saint. Right. Let me throw 3 more names out there that after this year you're gonna be like, oh, we're gonna miss these guys. Okay, you're gonna miss Dylan Bell, being that go-to player who does everything, and he counts on the throw to Dylan in all the tight spots. You're going to miss Dominic Lovett, who is very similar to Dylan Bell, except he has a little more wiggle.
Yeah, he's in between Dylan Bell and Ladd McConkey. He's right in the middle. Yeah.
And then a player like Ra Thomas.
Yeah.
And he's that guy. He's going to throw. I mean, I could name like 5 other receivers, Mooch, but those 3 guys, I got a feeling that Carson Beck is going to look to that. When the play is drawn up, the play is called in, he knows what's happening. Those are the players he's going to look towards, and especially on a 3rd down or a play where Georgia's got to move the chains or got to put some points on the board. Those are guys that he security blankets. They need those guys.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, you think of those players you named, add Oscar Delp into the list of, just because you're just talking about go-to players. Now think about that. Think about what you're seeing on the field. Then your defense is locking them down. You got everything covered. And then onto the field walks Arian Smith, Sokovie White, Nitro Tuggle. Those are the guys.
Anthony Evans taking the top off.
Anthony Evans taking the top off. Those guys are walking in 8th on the depth chart in some of these positions. And so usually you think, when you've got great receivers, you're like, if we lose this guy, Alabama cannot lose a wide receiver and win a national championship. That has been proven.
It's been proven as fact. That's science.
It's been proven as science. It is as science as it gets. And, you see that with a lot of teams. They can't lose any particular player. And that receiver room is so deep that you are injury proof as far as that goes, because you'll just keep getting better.
I will say, and I hate to even say this,
okay,
but the one player that Georgia cannot lose this year is Carson Beck. And I think everybody else on every other position, it would hurt to lose Mikell Williams or Malachi Starks or C.J. Allen. It would be devastating to lose Carson Beck. So we hope that that offensive line protects him and nothing else happens.
That's not how we want to see the Gunnar Stockton era begin.
We don't, because we don't think it's not that we don't think Gunnar Stockton could lead a successful team edition of the Georgia Bulldogs, but it's a different it's a much different type of team, and you need off season to prepare for that typically. So there you go. But we really think that this is going to be an iconic type of year. Georgia's set up for that, and that's our take. I don't think it's even a crazy take or unusual.
No,
it's just where I've got to, and the Georgia Bulldogs aren't skipping steps, and neither are we.
No,
but there is a step next, and we will talk about from offense to defense. And you mentioned earlier talking about Malachi Starks, and he's talking about who he thinks is the player to pay attention to, and he was talking about an offensive player. We don't talk about the defense, more so in the secondary, because Georgia did lose some very important secondary players, and they have a lot of youth coming back. And people are right to say, very accurate to say, even though Georgia has so many experience in the secondary, so much talent, you expect it to shake out just fine. Lots of high end talent there, and you trust the Kirby Smart, coaching staff to take care of it.
Absolutely. It was the idea that we put out there all the time of you put a bunch of killers in a room and let them beat each other up, and whoever walks out, that's never been more true than for the secondary. The five guys they're going to put out there, can't wait to see, or six guys, however it works. But the 5 or 6 guys that they put out there, can't wait to see who wins that battle, because you've got world-class athletes that could probably be on the U.S. Olympic team in a few cases out there doing battle with each other for starter positions.
It's true. Now, I think we've seen this before. I think that the team that starts, the defense that starts, the starters against that Clemson game might be different by the time you get to Alabama.
Will be different. That's just the way Kirby does it.
That's just fine. We could be wrong. If we're wrong, it's still to the benefit of Georgia.
Right.
It's going to be those killers that do come out and do prove themselves through practice. They're not going to be starting because they promised them something in the off season, or because they're worried about some money transferring if they don't get exactly what they want. Georgia's fine with that. If you're going to find a better place, go ahead. But I fully anticipate, and you mentioned it in the pre-show, that Dan Jackson and Malachi Starks likely the two starting safeties.
I would agree.
Against Clemson, unless some injuries happen or something else, and then. And of course, we had Dalen Everett. Looks like he's going to be one side of that cornerback position,
without a doubt. Yeah,
and it's up for grabs. I mean, I don't know who the names might be in competition for that other cornerback position. I feel like the best talent there and the best skill set is with Daniel Harris.
I agree.
Almost transferred.
Yeah,
and I think no matter what, he's going to be starting by Alabama.
Yeah, well, there's a reason he didn't transfer. I seriously, if he didn't have a legitimate shot at a starting position, I think he probably would have transferred. And so I really think it's Daniel Harris. His body type for that position is just too intriguing. He's flashed. And then even you mentioned Dalen Everett early, and all of the heat that guy took last year. Remember we had Eric on from Bulldog Report. That was his breakout player that he picked, and we've heard that kind of thing along the way. And he even put together a graphic on it to show, say, comparing Dalen Everett to other cornerbacks going into their third and their fourth, or their second and third, however it was, year for the Dawgs and the jump they made. I expect Dalen Everett to make a huge jump. I expect Daniel Harris to step in and really surprise. And the sexy pick is, of course, what's the 5-star kid at cornerback? Bringing it. Yeah,
Ellis Robinson. And something doesn't happen just right. He is. They say he's ready to play too.
Yeah, you think about Derek Stingley coming in and playing as a freshman for LSU. Everybody remembers that, and they want that to happen again. If it does, that's great. But I don't. There's too much talent in front of him for him just to come in and dominate. I think by Alabama, like you say, he'll be playing more.
And you got players like DeMello Jones out there too.
Yeah.
That, or 5-star players. If something doesn't work out with an injury, you have so much talent ready to go.
Yeah.
And he was Ellis Robinson, #1 cornerback in the country, rated.
Yeah.
And you got Jonell Aguero, his second year. We expect him to be like a linebacker playing at that star position.
That star. Yeah.
Joe Nell, can't wait. And if something happens at Jake Pope is also a safety who can provide some very quality depth, if not more than that.
Yeah.
The talent is unquestionable back there. It just depends on how Kirby. It really depends on practice and health. So the health of these players is going to matter. Of course, anything can happen, dinged up and not be 100% or have a big injury. But then the practice, you earn everything through the practices, and Kirby's going to make sure that happens. The preparation is what Georgia does better than other teams, and Georgia's going to use that to the pecking order is not going to be based on how many stars you have or how your NIL is. And so that feels really good for Georgia. That secondary, I think as the season goes on, you're going to see the talent kind of rise to the top. And Kirby's he's really kind of let you know that when he talked about KJ Bolden. He would not say that he's ahead of Malachi Starks at this point in Malachi Starks' career without if he wasn't going to let everybody know, his team included, that get ready for KJ Bolden. He's going to play a lot of football this year.
Yeah, when those freak athletes at Alabama, if KJ Bolden is not starting, I think he starts against Alabama. When they put those freak athletes on the field, you need your own freaks to go against them. Love Dan Jackson. Dan Jackson started a national championship game for us and won. But KJ Bolden is a guy, all this talk about Travis Hunter playing both ways and everything. KJ Bolden would be the same exact type of player in that situation. He could easily play wide receiver for the Dawgs.
Yes.
And you know, and he's playing safety, and so I expect to see the ball skills of those two. If you got Malachi and KJ on the field, we may only get to see it 1 year, but my goodness, two ball hawks back there.
Man, KJ Bolden was catching touchdown passes from Dylan Raiola last year, so a couple of 5-stars.
Yeah,
but moving on, and the recruiting has been paying big dividends for Georgia, and there's still a lot of meat on the bone. We talked about. Georgia does have a commitment we want to show right here as one of the number one defensive end edge rushers, Isaiah Gibson, who at one time we're committed to Lincoln Riley and USC. And
wasn't that cute?
Their hopes were so up. Coach Henney had convinced him to make a decision, as well as Justice Terry. And Isaiah Gibson, he decommitted and then quickly recommitted or committed to Georgia. And we got a clip right here just to show you what he looks like. And he plays quality football in high school. He's not playing private school, folks. This is not a bunch of 5'5" kids that he's having to go up against.
Well, the thing is as we're watching this video here, this is just him walking up to practice. Let's 6'5", 270 at last measure. As he hops over the fence like a bunny rabbit, and then him in those drills, whatever that is, 11 on 11, and just absolutely abusing the D end coming in, freakish strength, freakish pop, and sometimes it's just fun to see what all-world talent looks like against normal good high school football players. And those are good high school football players that looks like that 35-year-old man that plays football with the children at Thanksgiving. That's exactly what it looks like when he's out there.
We can't wait to see Gibson. And I don't think I realized how big of a commitment and recruit he was when he re-upped with Georgia.
Yeah.
But now I think everybody's starting to see that he's a difference maker, and he's one of those rare athletes who can be that game changer
and needs to go against the best to get better.
He's going to get better. That's the thing. He's going to get a lot better. He's going to get in the Georgia weight room, and he's got all the intangibles he needs right now. But just take a look at there's another graphic we want to show up. This is presented, I think, by On 3 Sports On 3, and
this is terrifying for any other team.
It is. These are all players who are leaning. Or I think they're trending towards Georgia. One of the best defensive linemen, the best defensive lineman for my money, Elijah Griffin. And he hasn't made a decision yet, but he is heavily leaning towards Georgia. And he's that Jalen Carter type defender. And then you got Justice Terry. You guys all know about the drama with Justice Terry, and just very similar to what happened with Isaiah Gibson and committing to Coach Henney before he realized that wasn't where he needed to be. Now, he's got some other schools involved with him. I think that there might be an Alabama-Georgia battle, but Georgia getting the lean right now.
I can't believe how strong their the Alabama is so weak in this graphic here. I really thought it was an even battle just a week or two ago. That's what I was hearing, at least. And so whatever's happened, if On3 knows something we don't, which they very well may, it seems that Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin are now a strong lead. So if you would have said Isaiah Gibson, Elijah Griffin, Justice Terry in one recruiting class, that's an all-time great recruiting class, period. The rest of it is just gravy.
Once you get those defensive players right there up front, it's over. It's over. If you can line up Isaiah Gibson and these two defensive linemen right here together in a class, man, scary. Then Georgia, these other guys are, of course, offensive linemen. Cortez Smith, maybe the next recruit to pop for Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Juan Gaston as well. Nick Brooks and Damola Adjahun. You guys can read that. But I don't know much about him. These other linemen I do know about.
He's more of a project. These other three they're pretty much going to step right in the weight room, hit it, get to rolling. I would compare Damola to what's the kid? I can't remember the names very well. The 6'10" kid, the 6'11" kid that just committed to Georgia. Very similar. He's coming in to learn the position and see how his skills translate. This guy's kind of the same thing, but just eaten up with talent. His feet look great.
So if any of you fans follow recruiting, and I'm sure you do, and you see these other teams posting these commitments here and there, these things kind of run in cycles, in batches, so to speak. You'll get a 2 or 3 a run committing to a school. You're like, oh, what's going on with us? I haven't heard any news lately. Be patient. Be patient.
The Georgia panic. Nobody panics like Georgia fans.
It's a machine, folks. Kirby Smart's recruiting is a machine. That's not something to worry about. You just enjoy it. At the end, it's going to be nice, and Georgia's going to get what Georgia needs. And that's my wish list. My wish list, really, Georgia's already got some terrific offensive players and defensive players committed. And the offensive line Georgia had committed last year, very good. So they got a lot of young talent coming in. And if they can add this to it, that's just that next cycle, next step. But these defensive players from this year,
it's looking ridiculous.
They're different. They're different. So if we can get Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin to go with Isaiah Gibson,
it's too close.
Gibson, Griffin, and Terry. Here we go. It's going to be fun to watch. All right.
It is.
So keep an eye on that as the season gets closer and closer.
There's a difference between 5-star players and freak 5 stars, and there's a couple of freak 5 stars in this list.
Freaky players. Georgia always recruits those guys with the right character. Now, Smooch, as we close out another spectacular show, it's been a fun week because we mentioned earlier that college football game 2025, people have been waiting so long for it to come out. People have been playing it all week. We don't get a chance to play it until later on today or tomorrow. And but there's one team that had a couple players overrated, and it's just for playability, I think.
Sure.
But their own fan base just buys into all that hype.
Yeah, here we go. I got something for you.
So delusion is a fixed false belief that doesn't change in light of conflicting evidence.
They don't know reality from their dream worlds, and they won't go outside and play.
A fixed false belief that is not grounded in reality.
All right, Troup Brinson, here's what I've prepared for you. I have on our TikTok page, I have taken some of my favorite responses from people we engage from the suddenly extraordinarily vocal Colorado Buffaloes fan base, and it is this idea that somehow Shedeur, playing against high school teams last year, put up these numbers, and that puts him in the same class with Carson Beck. Why? Because of who his father is. Because he only threw 3 interceptions with no offensive line. By the way, his interception total and his win total were almost the same. It's never good for those to match. It's never good. So what I'm going to do, in the essence of time, since we're probably over already anyway, because that's what we do on the Dog Show is we run over, I'm going to read these, and I'll get some inspirational music.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to one of the dudes, and he was telling me about how Shedeur was going to set the world on fire, and I said, sounds good. Let's just see. Let's not simply assign eliteness based upon what we want to see. and the following happened. So 3,230 yards, 27 TDs, 3 interceptions, a rating of 151.7, all while under duress is not elite? Your QB, Beck, had all the time he wanted and only passed him by 711 yards. He had 3 less TDs and 3 more interceptions. Interesting, with a little emoji with his hand over his face. He continues. You don't want to talk career numbers because your QB will be starting his 2nd year, while Shedeur has been starting every year and at every college. Straw man argument coming here. He says, you'll say, but he was at Jacksonville State University. Let me ask you, how's James Houston doing? Should we talk about Hall of Fame players from JSU? No, we didn't even bring up JSU. I don't know what this is. Ever heard of Walter Payton? Yes. Jackie Slater? Yes. Robert Brazil? Yes. I've heard of all those. We didn't bring any of that up. But this is what delusion is, folks. They were throwing because they didn't have an O-line. You're comparing teams, not quarterbacks, which means Beck can't compete with Shedeur. That's where you're losing me. He improved their record from the year before. I want to read that one again. Speaking of Shedeur, he says he improved their record from the year before. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, he
down a little bit.
Definitely improved it. If it's from the
1 to 4,
1 to 4 is improvement incrementally. Maybe they're not skipping steps. Maybe they win 5 games this year, Smooch.
Maybe so. Maybe they take that next step and move all the way up to 1 win away from bowl eligibility.
That would be something.
Wouldn't that be something? The whole thing with this Troup is in the fragility of the Colorado fan base. And by the way, there were a lot of very foul and very accusatory comments we got that we didn't put on because it's kind of nonsense. But
typical stuff, yes.
Yeah, typical stuff. Right. But if you want to be considered elite, which they are now claiming eliteness. I have never seen a 4-win team claim eliteness. They are claiming we're elite now. We fixed the offensive line. That means Shedeur, the best quarterback in all of the country, is ready.
Well, Smooch, I mean, EA Sports just told them they had the best quarterback in college football, the best wide receiver in college football. They've got one of the best coaches in college football with the hype. With, he definitely needs your undivided attention, folks. But
I got that right here. Don't go anywhere.
Deion Sanders, Coach Prime.
I need your undivided attention real quick.
There it is.
So they have that, and they have a video game they can play, and they have the transfer portal that, on paper shows that they've upgraded these positions, and they don't know what's going to happen when they actually have to play football. Historically, that doesn't matter as much this year, and but they feel like it should matter. And they are new college football fans. So why wouldn't they think that this is a 10-win, 11-win team? Maybe if things break right, maybe in the college football playoffs. Why wouldn't they think that? Nobody's really that knows what they know, and what they know is very limited, but it's still just as powerful to them individually.
Yeah.
Who's going to tell them different? And if you do, then it's because your guys got some kind of agenda, or you don't like them for some particular reason that they essentially point out. Yeah. It's Colorado. The backup, forget about Coach Prime. It's Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah.
Okay. We know where they are and where they've been and what that means. And we also can look at Deion Sanders and why he's there. It doesn't lead you to think that Colorado is going to skip all these steps that teams like Tennessee and Florida and South Carolina, there's teams all over the country that can't skip these steps to be that kind of program, despite a lot of talent. More talent. I'm sorry, Colorado. Even more talent than you guys have.
Yeah.
You don't get to just because EA Sports tells you that, you don't get to do that. Just because the hype train is trending and towards some of your players, that's not a college football program, and success rarely follows that. The people who know football know that, and we kind of snicker and watch it and say, it's going to be a tough one. Yeah. And, We enjoy that part of it, yes.
Yeah, when you're going to say things like, which I just saw today on X, if you're going to say things like, put a picture of the Colorado receivers up and say the best wide receiver room in all of college football.
Yes,
if you're going to say things like that, you have to be able to accept criticism and debate. And unfortunately, since they've never won and they've never been a program of any count in many, many years, they don't know how to behave. They don't know how to react. You guys have got to learn to simply talk college football, debate, tell us where we're wrong, explain it to us. Let's go back and forth. But when you just throw a hissy fit, you sound very Tennessee. Tennessee can't have a conversation about football. And unfortunately, that seems to have infected Colorado.
Colorado wishes they were Tennessee. They are so far away from being a team like, and on the field, they're so far away from being a team like Tennessee. And we give Tennessee a lot of problems, but Colorado, you guys are delusional. And Shedeur Sanders,
Nico was 10 times the player Shedeur Sanders is.
Shedeur, Travis Hunter, Coach Prime, they won't change that. And as a matter of fact, they'll be gone sooner than later, and you won't be dealing with the same conversation anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, as long as you can play EA Sports and have a good time and have some wild plays happen.
Exactly.
And you have a wide receiver picture of a wide receiver room that looks like, they've been in the weight room. I don't really know where to go with that. Nothing translates to actual football. So
it looks like a calendar.
We know what it looks like.
It looks like a fireman's calendar is what that picture looks like.
That's the bottom line is, yeah, we know what it looks like to be a college, a quality team, an elite product.
100%.
Not it. So,
yep.
So congratulations to being on the Delusional Fan Alert. Once again, maybe a harbinger for things to come as the season goes. We'll see.
Yeah, who knows? But for right now.
So delusion is a fixed false belief that doesn't change in light of conflicting evidence.
They don't know reality from their dream worlds, and they won't go outside and play.
A fixed false belief that is not grounded in reality.
We say this a lot of times. Congratulations, Colorado. You are probably the most famous you will ever be in the 2024 football season on the Dawgs Show by yourself. Delusional Fan Alert.
Preach it, man. Preach it. Enjoy. Congratulations, guys. We've been pulling for you. We want you to do well, and we're glad that you stopped by for the Delusional Fan Alert.
Next week, we should have some really good takes on the new football game as we dig down in that.
Yes.
And
I'm going to be digging in 7 short hours.
Sure, we'll have a guest on, maybe Coach Hayes. I'm not sure who's going to come on next week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to Alaska in a couple weeks. So next week we'll have to have a really good show because I'm going to have to figure that. Anyway, we'll figure that out. We'll talk about that later. But I can't wait to hear what this show sounds like. And you can find us anywhere on any platform. We mentioned YouTube earlier, but please find us and give us a 5-star review. Tell us what you think. Give us your thoughts and opinions, Smooch.
Absolutely. At the Dawgs Show Pod everywhere. YouTube, Twitter.
Beautiful.
TikTok, all those things. Go find us. If you're listening to us on the audio, please go to Apple. Give us a 5-star review.
We like it.
Push us there. We like that. On YouTube, keep the comments coming, guys. That was real exciting. A lot of fun this week. A lot of people meeting each other, as a matter of fact. And so just gaining momentum for the season. We want to have a nice dialogue going with the fans before the season starts.
And if you're on TikTok, Colorado fans, just take a little break, relax, and enjoy football. Don't get a little bit over your ski. Right, what we saw earlier. You relax, and
it's a great
enjoy the process, baby.
Enjoy it, man. Yeah. You went from the worst team in college football to upset that you're not a top 2 team. I mean, instantly. It's
TikTok.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. TikTok. There's some angry people on TikTok. TikTok's fun too. Just enjoy TikTok. Watch some people grill out. There's a lot of good grilling on TikTok. You don't have to
love it.
You don't have to talk about Shedeur Sanders.
All right. Thank you, folks, so much for listening. Another spectacular show. We love you so much. Smooch, take us to the house, brother.
Let's do it.
This is the Dawgs Show with Troup and Smooch.
Hey, it's the Dawgs Show.
Go Dawgs, 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 go Dawgs.